Hope everyone is doing great today. So today I'm going to be talking about why I still love oil companies. Not so much the oil commodity specifically. I guess I should specifically explain when I'm talking about oil so much. I really mean the companies. But we'll get into here why I just absolutely love the oil companies. I know I've been wrong in the short term. Obviously, we've seen oil come off a bit of a cliff here, but it's still very, very high. It's at $98. Like it wasn't that long ago, but well, like a couple like pre-war, 90, $100, 97 would be very, very, very high. Everybody's kind of, we all have, I guess it's called, what is it, short memory, I guess call it. But obviously we've seen it come down a lot here, but I'll kind of get into why I think it's still the place to be, and it's all the more reason to jump in now that it's come down so much before I, but it could very well go to 80, $70 like in the short term and maybe even medium term here. But I want to even reiterate that at 80, $70, I would still be holding like these companies that I have right here. I would still be holding them for a number of reasons because they're still going to be, the most important thing, they're going to be achieving their debt target. They're going to be achieving their debt targets. They're going to have less debt. Most of them they're all going to be debt free. The price of oil goes down, it's just going to be a slower process, but they're still going to get there, and they're still going to initiate buybacks and dividends, as we've seen. If we look at Crescent, they did this recently, about a month before their earnings. We can maybe see it here. It's unfortunate we can't. Oh, I was looking at news. Sorry. There we go. Quarterly dividend raise, and they announced basically that they're going to be doing more buybacks as well. And they will basically involve in effect because they achieved their debt targets, and they announced that, and it jumped like almost 15% on that day actually. But yeah, like even if oil, I don't see how realistically how oil can even go to 60 some. Like I would be really, really shocked. 70, I can maybe see, but in my mind, it's still going to remain very high. Like it, it's the fundamental supply problem. It's a supply problem. It's really, we have no capability to increase supply. Companies aren't drilling. This is very different. Every other time that oil has shot up to $100 or so, or even high-ish, oil has shot up, the companies always drill and drill and drill and drill. This time, it's the complete opposite. They are not drilling. All they're doing is returning capital to shareholders. Oil went negative in 2020. A lot of companies are still, for example, like Baytex up here, are still rebuilding the balance sheet and paying off debt. All the companies are paying off debt because of 2020. Well, mostly, generally speaking, obviously, but it's like it's like even if oil goes to 70, these companies are still making a lot of money. And 70 is a very, very, very long way away from here. I don't see how that's going to happen unless we have a real deep recession. And that leads me to that there is still two jobs for every person. In my mind, as long as people have jobs and they're getting, they have employment, they can get jobs, and there's two jobs or no, two jobs for every person. I always get it mixed up a bit, but it's as long as people have jobs, they're still going to be driving. They're going to drive to work, right? They're going to well, have money to pay for their gas or their, or whatever. And the consumer also has all this, a trillion or two in savings still. Like they have a lot of savings. They're sitting on a lot of savings. And the University of Michigan index sent the consumer confidence index came out, I believe it was Friday. And, I believe Tom Lee was talking about it a bit. He said that it was a good thing that it went up. But the last reading, like the month before the last reading, was an all-time low at 50, I believe it was. And we only jumped up to 52.6. That's hardly an increase. And you would almost expect to see that with, all the commodities rolling over and whatnot. And well, you know, but it's like it didn't go up by that much at all. And but that leads me to that, that and savings. I mean, in my mind, my theory is that people are holding on to those savings because they know they're gonna have to pay for food and gas and energy. That's what they're saving that for. Why would, that's in my mind, that's really what they're saving that for. And that's what all those savings are going to go into, is food and energy. My real fear is that we're going to have stagflation, and we have such a fundamental oil supply problem. And that's, look, companies are not drilling now at $100 oil, 125, 90, they're not drilling. They're returning capital to shareholders instead, like I was saying. Every time else in history it would be different. They wouldn't be doing that. They would be drilling and drilling and drilling every time oil went high or shot up, and that would effectively fix the supply price, and as well the supply side, sorry, as well as the price somewhat, obviously. But this time it's different. And if oil goes to 70, if it goes lower, why would companies want to drill more? If they're not drilling now at these high oil prices, why on earth would they ever want to drill more? They would drill less. Heck, they'd probably even, dare I say, slow down oil production at $70 oil. Dare I say that? Obviously, that's a very, I can't, say that, but if oil, like, it's, my point is that you cannot fix the supply side. They're not going to drill more unless we have higher oil prices for a sustained time, or the government invests in it or allows more policies. And we all know, climate change is a very real thing. It's very real. The weather is scary, but the government is people, like, they were very anti-oil. The Biden campaign was anti-oil. There's all these laws in place and all this stuff, and they're not going to invest in the oil. Are you crazy? The Democrats can't invest into oil, just politically. Like I say, climate change is very real. I'm not talking about, I don't mean to pick sides in politics. I'm in the middle. I really am. But it's not going to, the supply side cannot be fixed without high oil prices, and the demand side can also not be killed off without high oil prices. As we know, in my mind, we haven't had that big rise to 140. We've only hit 125. And then we sunk way back down to the 90s. But we need very high oil prices to kill demand. And we also need high sustained oil prices to fix the supply problem. So if we go into a recession, which I'm of the belief that we're going to go into a recession. I'm honestly scared something bad is going to happen. Something really bad is going to happen. The Fed is going to break something. But if we do go into a recession, then say oil goes, but in my mind, in a recession, oil can stay at 80 to 90, even 100. But say we have a big bad recession, some big, or even a recession, and we have $70 oil or something like that. Companies aren't going to drill anymore, right? The supply side isn't going to get fixed. Once we come out of that recession, what is going to happen to demand? It's not only going to keep growing a little bit during a recession, demand is going to slow during a recession, but it's going to be, it's going to be bubbling under the surface somewhat. But once we get out of a recession, inflation is gone, we have a normal economy, the oil demand is going to boom, it's going to take off, and the supply side, again, is still not going to be fixed. It will not be fixed. A year or two from now, it's not going to be fixed unless we have sustained oil prices, which will lead companies, they'll have no choice but to deploy their capital into drilling some. They can't just, return it all to shareholders or just hold it all on the balance sheet. They're obviously, you see some drilling now, but it's not, they're not drilling like crazy like before. Historically, this is completely different for so many reasons. It's still the perfect oil storm. I've kept on this page for a while here. I get so carried away, but we'll show off this as well. I'll keep talking here. But that's really it. Once we get out of a recession, once we get rid of inflation, once the economy is normal, demand is going to boom and the supply side is not going to take off. So that's why I'm long oil. And those companies are still going to have the high oil prices somewhat, even during a bad recession. They'll be able to stay afloat. They'll still be making lots of money, paying off the debt, achieving debt targets. Dividends will remain, buybacks will remain. And once we get out of this economy, and boom, and then also how there's this post-COVID boom stuff, lots of traveling. The airports right now are stuffed, and you see all that stuff. But my theory is that we haven't seen the last of that at all. Like it's being very, very limited because of inflation. People aren't getting out and traveling and stuff. Once we get rid of inflation, we have a normal economy, and we still have COVID as well. Once that happens, or even once COVID is gone, we're going to have an even bigger just COVID travel boom, like road trips, airplanes, everything, the whole 9 yards. And once we have a normal economy, more than ever, that is going to just take off. There's going to be so much traveling, road trips and stuff, and that's going to, well, that'll increase demand. And obviously, the deal is, I know we'll have, high-ish oil prices, but I feel the consumer is going to get, dare I say, is going to get used to that. And everything, like everything else in inflation, realistically, is going to be fine in 2 years from now. It's going to go back to normal. I hope, like I cannot stress that enough. I hope, my big fear is stagflation. But realistically, everything is going to go like back to normal prices except oil. That's the only thing, and that's kind of also why I'm so scared of stagflation, is the oil prices in a way. But like, really though, like it's just, that's why I remain so incredibly bullish on oil. And now, like, again, I'm gonna reiterate, in the short term, because in my mind, it's at any time now we can just take off. Like literally just we can rocket here. I don't understand why we haven't taken off yet. Obviously, well, I do understand. I know why. Obviously, it's recession fears. I think everybody kind of knows that, but nothing has changed, guys. Like nothing has fundamentally changed. Demand has slowed a bit. We had high gas prices, I will admit, and that didn't kill demand, sorry, that slowed demand some. But still, like, demand is still there. There is 2 jobs for every person. You can see here, and there was also, no, the Saudis didn't directly say that we're going to pump more oil. You can read whatever you want, but the Saudi at the Saudi press conference after, they said they will, they're going to see, like, base it off. They're going to increase production if they feel it necessary. They're not going to, they're not promising to do anything. If they feel it necessary, they will increase production. But remember, something else is that the Saudis, they have a little bit of spare capacity left. Everybody kind of does, a little tiny bit of spare capacity, but they all keep that in reserve in case of an emergency. And they almost have to. And something else is that if they don't keep it in case of an emergency, something else is that traders are going to get scared. Like, what if something happens and there is no, there's no more ability to really turn on supply, and we're at, $200 oil, which leads me to my next thing. Is Russia. Mr. Putin has not touched oil yet. He's kept Ukraine hostage. He's holding grain. He's cut off gas. The pipeline is under maintenance right now. It's not clear if it's going to come on or not, but he has not touched oil. You cannot tell me he is not, he's afraid to touch oil. This man has held the world hostage with food, and you cannot tell me he's afraid to just immediately shut off oil like that. JP Morgan said, I believe it was JP Morgan said that if Russian supply decreases by a lot, $300 oil. Putin knows that. If oil prices drop itself, why wouldn't Putin want to just increase that? He can drop Russian production by a tenth, by a quarter instantly, right? Why wouldn't he want the high oil prices? He wants the West to suffer, right? Obviously, you never, ever, ever, I cannot stress enough, bet on geopolitics or any other country. You cannot bet on that, but there are so many factors as to why, Putin would want to make oil go higher and even send it potentially to 300. In my mind, again, it's because he's using oil as his weapon of last resort. That's why. But anyways, though, we'll also look at the dollar here. We'll look at a year chart. Obviously, a high dollar does not help any commodity at all. Well, oil, but a high dollar doesn't help any commodity at all. And these companies, the ones that I have, again, they have these 1 to 2 PEs. They're ridiculously undervalued. Like, they still are. Like, they're trading at almost like 70, pretty much. Like, some of them, the occasional oil companies, even trading at October of 2021 levels right now at $97 oil. They're trading at October of 2021. I believe it was Parex that was almost trading there. And even some of these companies are just trading at such low levels for just like you think something has fundamentally changed, but I'll wrap it up here, guys. That's why I remain incredibly bullish on oil in the short. Yeah, it's going to take off any time in my mind. It could go, like I said, it could go to $70 in the short term, but in the medium and long term, especially, I'm super bullish, like super bullish. So, anyways, hope everyone is doing great, and I also hope that everyone enjoyed.